Okay, so today I'm repairing this Celsus LCD32S913HD 32-inch LCD TV, which is this is a Vestel set as well. Celsus get Vestel to build their TVs. I think Sainsbury's sold these, the Celsus brand. Either way, it's built by Vestel, and it's failed, of course, because Vestel's TVs are just not very reliable at all. So the fault with the set today is, it turns on, gives an image, and the image is perfect. However, there's no sound through the speakers. So it could be something simple, like this headphone port's got a bit of dust or something in. It is, you know, fooling the mainboard into believing that there's headphones plugged in and isn't running the speakers. Or, which is a more common fault on this, the audio amplifier failing on the mainboard, which I have seen a couple of these Vestels do that, and I think this is a 17MB60 or something. I don't think it's an MB35 because they're actually quite a bit more reliable, but we'll have a look when we take the back off. Built in 2012 as well, by the way, so it's only a couple of years old. Not that old though for a TV, and I dare say that a few months after I repair this, it'll break down again with something else. So, yep, garbage TVs, but it keeps it out of the trash. So let's take the back off and have a look at this. So here's a look inside of this set, and it's not really, there's nothing much to it really. So the power supply is a 17PW25-4. These are riddled with faults, just garbage basically. One of the worst power supply designs out there. These just aren't very reliable, and I've serviced quite a few of them. The most common fault on these is these output diodes failing, which these rectify the voltage for the 24-volt rail, which feeds the PFC. And what happens is it overloads it, this transistor shorts, and its resistors fail, all because of the shorted output diodes. It's just basically a crap design, because it's Vestel and they try to cheap out on everything. I will eventually, when I sell this TV, I'll mod the power supply so that it'll be a bit more reliable. So anyway, fortunately it's not a power supply fault, so guess we're in luck there. The main board is a 17MB65-2, which I have had issues before with, and I'm going to show you what I've had issues with. So you see, this is the speaker connector where the speakers plug into, and you see that going to each pin on the speaker output there's a ceramic capacitor. There's four, one for each wire. Now these ceramic capacitors think just help with the noise on the output of the speakers. I haven't really looked at the schematic for this, and I'm not going to bother because I probably know that they're at fault. These ceramic capacitors anyway, they tend to fail, and if one shorts, it will drag down the entire audio amplifier so that you won't get any sound at all through the, the headphone jack or through the speakers. It just may be a bit quiet though. So we're going to test these ceramic capacitors with a multimeter. I'm just going to check if there's a dead short across them, and if there is, we're going to go ahead and replace them. And there are actually repair kits out there that you can get. Now also, this chip here, U21, is the audio amp which drives these DC to DC converters. That could potentially be at fault, and if that is, it's probably going to be get a new mainboard for this, because this is BGA soldered and it's very difficult to solder. I probably could do it, but the chances of success are very low. I have replaced buffer ICs on plasmas, the ones that have pins like that. However, this is half BGA, half, TIG soldered, so it's very difficult to solder. So we're going to get a multimeter and we're going to check these ceramic capacitors for any shorts. And if there is a short circuit across there, we can take the ceramic capacitors out, and then we can see if we get any audio out the headphone. You probably won't out the speakers, but at least then you'll know that it's the cap's at fault. So let's get my meter and we'll test it.
Right, I'm putting 160 on the table. Yes.
Okay, so I've accidentally fixed the TV, and I'm still going to need to do some minor work to it. However, it is an easy fix, and it's quite a simple one. And I'm going to take this to my friend's place, and I'm going to get this main board on the microscope. I won't be able to film that, but I was messing around, as I do. I was, poking things, like testing that, pushing it, see if the audio came. I had it tuned into the Freeview, of course, and I decided to check the voltage going to the speakers, which should be 12 volts. And it is, and all of a sudden I moved the TV a bit because I was a bit like, oh, why is it 12 volts but no audio still? And I pulled the TV forward and there was no 12 volts. So I started poking around again. I put my finger on this little audio amp and unmuted the TV, and the audio came back. As soon as I took my finger off, it went. It's actually warm at the minute, so I think that this is more failed solder joints. See if I can get it to do it.
No time to waste. Let's see how Eliane's dresser gets on in the sale room.
It is coming up now. You turned down the £160. You decided to gamble. I would have thought
it's quite hard to hold the camera.
I thought it was poor.
You thought it was more?
Yeah,
Okay.
I thought it was worth more than that.
Okay, well, I think it's worth a gamble. The question is going to go in a only £120, which means you could lose out.
That's right.
If it goes for the estimate. Let's see what happens.
The 60 cylindrical dressing table. There we are with the lift-up mirror and the pull-out seat. Nice thing.
So I think that the solder joints on this are cracked, and I think that this chip, it does run hot. Even just touching it then, it's quite painful on my finger. The heat output, I think that what's happened is this has just gotten too hot because it's such a small IC, and the solder joints have cracked. But I won't be able to know until I get this under a microscope and check out the solder joints. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some flux to this and use a heat gun, reflow the solder, and hopefully should bring this back to full working order. Then all I have to do is fix the power supply, and well, not fix it, just mod it so it lasts a bit longer. I don't need to change any caps because they're semi-decent. They're a HASI or AISHI or whatever it is, and Elite brand, and they rarely fail. They're a cheap brand name, but I've never seen any fail, so hopefully it's just a simple case of that. So let's see what happens. Okay, so I'm getting ready to reflow this board, and I'm using Chip Quick Flux, which lowers the temperature of the solder. And I'll clean it off after. I'm going to be using my hot air gun, which can, on the low speed, which is this, that's 500 degrees hot air, and high speed is 1000. So I'm going to put it on low speed, because when you're working with surface mount devices like this, if you're using hot air and you put the fan on too fast, you'll just basically blow the components off the board, and then the board will be ruined or are very difficult to repair. So I'm going to apply some chip quick flux to this around this IC. So I'll zoom in there. Just going to drop around it. And I know it's not completely around the chip, but when I apply heat, it'll fall into place. Okay, so before I put the heat gun on, I'm going to be cautious about some other things. We're going to want to cover up any plastic that's exposed in that area, so we can focus the heat on the chip. So, you know, this LVDS connector, this is very fragile, and by the way, removing an LVDS like this, you have to carefully unhinge each corner, but this can get melted, and these SCART sockets can also get melted. And also, whenever working with surface mount device, say if you're using the top of the board, you want to check if there's any surface mount devices on the bottom under where you're going to be working. And if there is, you're going to want to find a way to secure that, because if not, it's just going to fall off. So you need to have a few precautions. So we're going to isolate this area so it's just the chip exposed, basically. Okay, so I've isolated anything which could potentially get damaged by the heat. So what I'm going to do is just put this on low heat and just hold it above the chip for around a minute or so. It melts really quick, and hopefully this chip should be reflowed, and I'll get back to you when it's done. Okay, so I can see that the solder has gone molten around the chip. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it to cool down for at least about 10 or 20 minutes, because if you knock the board now, when the solder is still molten, it'll just knock the chip off and out of place, and then you'll have to resolder it, and you don't want to be doing that. So I'm going to let it cool down. Okay, so the chip's cooled down, so what I'm going to do is use IPA to get rid of all the flux. The reason why it's in this syringe is because I have it in a bottle, and I can't just go pouring the bottle on here, so at work I have a spray can of IPA, but that's not here at the minute, so drop some on there, and in a few seconds, just clean it off with a toothbrush. Just literally melts off the flux. Now we're going to let that dry. We're going to put this in the TV and see what happens. So as this IC gets so hot, I'm going to install this heatsink. This is a heatsink that I pulled off a dead mainboard, and it has pre-applied thermal pad. I'm just going to put it on top of this heatsink to help it cool. Let's see about that. Because it does get super hot to touch, and I'm guessing that that's probably the reason why the solder failed. Whereas other chips, like this main CPU gets hot, which is why Vestel actually heatsinked it. But this RAM chip and this HDMI chip, they barely even get warm, so yeah. Got a heatsink on there now, so test it now, innit? So let's get this in the TV. Okay, so the set is now repaired, and that's all working fine. The audio never faults out anymore. Replace these output diodes on the power supply. I didn't replace the FET and the resistors because they only tend to fail when the diodes blow. So that should be a lot more reliable, and I got my initial on, so I've been testing this for a few hours and it hasn't messed up, so I can almost safely say that it's repaired. But I'm going to put the back on and run it and see what happens. At least now it's, I can say, about 90% working. Just got to test it. So I'll get back to you.
It sounds like a gun. I don't know why I said dagger. To go through with 20 grand. You put dagger, the correct answer is...
Okay, so the set is now fixed, as you can hear. It was, I'm guessing, failed solder joints on that audio IC. I never took it to my mates to get it under the microscope, because I didn't even bother messaging him. But I wonder if I would have, it would have shown up on the under the microscope that there was cracked solder joints, but I never did. And I mean, even just with, you know, looking at it, I could tell that the solder joints looked flaky and horrible. So it's a possibility, but either way, the set is now fixed.
Drew, if it's wrong,
If I shake it for you,
you're going out. He'll like this. To go through with 20 grand.
absolutely fine. So it's a fairly simple one, but yeah, I wonder if that was the fault. It hasn't sold yet, so I'm going to run it for the next few days and, you know, just turn it on every so often. It's taking some photos for some reason, the camera is, so it's because of people's faces, but yeah, until the set is sold, I'm going to turn this on, test it, and just make sure the audio still works, because you can have intermittent faults where the audio comes back and then goes away. A bit like this one, but it could be something else, so it's best that I just test it and make sure that it's all good. But it seems to be working perfect now. And the most common failure on these Vestel sets when the audio fails is the ceramic capacitors on the main board for the audio circuit. They tend to fail. I mean, I've serviced probably about 5 main boards where I've had to replace failed ceramic caps that are causing the audio not to work. I did one 17MB65, the same as this, as well as a few 17MB40s and some others. And I mean, I should have probably replaced those caps, but if I ever get the TV back faulty, I will fix it. And I'm given 3 months warranty on this set anyway. Yeah, but it all appears to be working.
Names?
Kissy Go.
That's on the max volume. But I hope this helps anyone who's servicing one of these Vestel sets. And there's so many problems with them, they're just garbage basically. I mean, Vestel's the most common TVs that I get to service, because they're just not built to last. But this one's now working at least. I wonder what I'll get in next. So thanks for watching. That's been a repair on a 17MB65-2 for the audio circuit failing, so hope this helps.